Hello, this is David Larson. I know with the viewers of YouTube that there's thousands of Heath collectors out there, and I thought I'd spend a little time with a book that has some very interesting history about Heath. This was written in 1992 by Terry Perdue called Heath Nostalgia. Don't know if many of these copies are around. You may be able to find one used on Amazon.com. Terry Perdue was a ham, K8TP, and we found the book to be quite interesting. It's not comprehensive history, but it is a historical document of Heath Nostalgia, and it was written just before the company basically closed down for the final time in the early 90s. Doesn't seem to have a regular publisher, so it may have been self-published by Terry himself. Here you see it's Sonoma, Washington, so we're not sure exactly how it was published. It does, however, have a ISBN number, so those of you that would like to research this book a little bit can take a look at the ISBN number here and perhaps find out more about the book. Here's the outside back cover of Terry's book. Some very interesting notes here about what is included in the book and his thoughts on the Heath Company. You can stop the video and read it at your leisure, but I thought I'd include this. You have to excuse the smudges. I've had this book about 19 years and read it and thumbed through it a number of times. But down here, Terry included a number of pages of writing of basic history from the start of the Heath Company in the early 1900s. And he has collected together what he refers to as a picture potpourri, a lot of pictures of the first Heath when Mr. Heath was making airplanes, Edward Heath, and yet Heath died an unfortunate death in an airplane accident. I'd like to tell you about my experience reading the Heath Nostalgia book by Terry Perdue. Tells about the history of the Heath Company, which Edward Heath started in the early 1900s, building aircraft parts and airplanes. By 1925, he had a catalog and was producing drawings for the planes for $99, or a full plane you could actually fly for $1,000. Unfortunately, in 1931, Ed Heath was killed in a craft accident when the wing on one of his planes broke, and he crashed into a farm in Illinois. In 1933, Walter Clinton purchased the company from Ed's wife, Helen, and tried to run the company. Unfortunately, he must have been a shady character because the IRS shut his company down after about a year. In 1935, Howard Anthony purchased the name Heath from the IRS and formed the company called Heath Aircraft Company. He continued building airplanes, designing airplanes, and also started to build small radios for airplanes as well. The first one was the HT-4. And during the war, he supplied many aircraft parts and so forth to the military for government use. After the war, there was a slump in business, and Mr. Anthony started to buy surplus electronic parts from the government, selling them as individual parts and starting to build some simple kits, oscilloscope kits, vacuum tube voltmeter, and so forth. By 1954, he had 60 kits on the market. Unfortunately, July 23, 1954, Anthony and 4 others were killed in an airplane crash, and Mrs. Anthony, or Helen Anthony, carried on the business until she could find a suitable buyer. In 1955, the company was sold to the Daystron Incorporated. They carried on with the kit business, making many fine kits over the years. Early on in the amateur radio business, they had the first amateur transmitter, the AT-1, which I was fortunate to own in the mid-50s, along with the DX-100. In the mid-70s, they started working with computers. And I was fortunate to be a consultant, along with some other people with the Heath Company. And the end result of some of that work was the H8, the 8080 microcomputer product. And the Heath Company also used some of our books from the Blacksburg series to develop coursework around some of their computers, and we were of course very pleased with that. The 80s were the heyday of Heath Company. selling mini kits of various kinds, including pretty serious work with computers. The company started to go downhill in the late 80s, and by 1992, when Terry wrote his book, the company was almost out of business, and it went out of business shortly after that in the very early 90s. And my understanding is that they sold or actually just destroyed many of the manuals and data sheets and literature that was available on the Heath products over the years, and it certainly would have been nice to have some of that material at this time, but unfortunately it's all gone, and the Heath company is long out of business, and it was a wonderful business, and the book itself I think you'll find enjoyable to read, and I hope you've enjoyed my little discussion here of Terry's book. Thank you very much.